And I flew to Iraq. I was extremely brave. In fact, so brave I wanted to give myself the Congressional Medal of Honor. I said to my people, am I allowed to give myself the Congressional Medal of Honor? And, I've given out so many to guys that are seriously brave. I mean, they come in with the arms are missing, the legs are missing. The stories are so unbelievable. And I said, no, it's a little stretch if I gave myself one of them. But it's one of those things. Someday I'm going to try.
His Majesty the Baby. With these 4 words, Sigmund Freud captured the essence of narcissism in 1914. Freud explained how humans are born self-centered. As infants, we are entirely consumed by our needs, like eating or staying warm. But most of us gradually depart from this narcissistic state as we develop our prefrontal cortex and turn into adults with morals, ideals, and even empathy for other people. But only most of us. A few % of the population suffer from narcissistic personality disorder. These individuals display deeply impaired emotional empathy. They are arrogant and attention-seeking, and they demand admiration, even when they're wrong. They also try to dominate and exploit others, and quite often, they are pathological liars. Now, which US president does that remind you of? Everyone agrees Donald Trump is different, but once you realize how he's different, all the pieces of the puzzle fall into place. But why is the combination of narcissism and presidential power so dangerous? And how do we stop Trump before he destroys the free world? Let's take a closer look. In 2024, 233 mental health professionals warned the public that Trump is a narcissist. With a narcissist in power, understanding narcissistic personality traits is now a survival skill. So in this episode, I will present 3 topics which illustrate how Trump's personality is different from yours and mine: freedom, truth, and recognition. And I will reveal Trump's motive for destroying the free world, because that realization will enable us to fight back. We begin with freedom. There's a good chance you grew up in the free world, because in 2004, 51% of the world population lived in democracies. But now, just 2 decades later, that has been reduced to just 28%. Not because we the people dislike freedom, but because dictators do. And so, democratic governments are toppled, citizens lose their freedoms, and masked police begin killing protesters, now even in the United States. The reason is simple. Freedom empowers the people, and therefore freedom is kryptonite to fascist rulers. Our free world emerged from the ashes of World War II. We created a system of global governance and ratified international laws to establish the rules-based world order. US President Roosevelt was the architect, and many nations joined him because Adolf Hitler had shown how without international laws, unhinged men could destroy everything. And for decades, freedom thrived. Human rights were written into law, gender equality improved, and extreme poverty declined. In 1947, Jawaharlal Nehru became the first Prime Minister of newly independent India. He promoted pluralistic democracy, making room for voices across the political spectrum. From 1978, the Chinese paramount leader Deng Xiaoping changed China from a closed communist country to an open, free-trading economy. And in the late 1980s, Mikhail Gorbachev fought corruption by introducing freedom of information in the Soviet Union with his glasnost reform. For a brief moment, it really felt like to freedom, only the sky was the limit. But sadly, freedom peaked at the turn of the millennium. Newly elected President Putin began corrupting Russian society, while also taking control of independent Chechnya, occupying Georgia and Moldova, killing freedom fighters in Syria, and invading Ukraine. Freedom was now losing terrain. In 2013, the Chinese Communist Party appointed President Xi Jinping, who crushed all opposition, sent 1.8 million Uyghurs to labor camps, destroyed the aspiring democracy of Hong Kong, and made himself dictator for life. Freedom lost again. And since 2014, Prime Minister Narendra Modi has been eroding the liberal democracy of India with Hindu nationalism, attacking religious minorities and jailing critics without trial. Freedom lost again. But the most grave event was the re-election of Donald Trump. Voted out after one term and now a convicted felon even, he still managed to claw his way back to power, thanks to generous billionaire donors who spent hundreds of millions of dollars convincing the American people to go back to the dead end. This is the key reason freedom is now in peril. In the free world, we could manage the declining freedom in Russia, China, and India, as our relations with these nations were mainly commercial. But the United States losing its freedom is a real existential threat to the free world. Because the US is deeply integrated into everyone's intelligence services, our military capabilities, our digital infrastructure, global media, and politics. And while President Xi and Prime Minister Modi are rational and somewhat predictable, Donald Trump is different. Not just by his looks, his manners, or lack thereof. Mentally, Trump is completely different from other leaders. At the foundation, we humans all have one thing in common. We are a collective species. We dominate planet Earth not because we are the fastest, the biggest, or the strongest individuals, but because we outcompete all others by our ability to collaborate. From the first hunting groups 3 million years ago, through collaborative farming in the Neolithic era, to now, when our cities form webs of light at night, so vast they are visible from space. You and I now live at the pinnacle of human collaboration. After World War II, we forged our freedom not from the metals of war, but increasingly from the bonds of international community. To a wide extent, freedom and prosperity became a shared endeavor. But evidently, Trump's behavior is not formed by this collective mindset. To Trump, the world is more like a staircase. Every human relation is either a higher level he wants to reach, or just a step to be trodden on as he climbs up the stairs. As an example, when Trump needed Bill Barr to fill his cabinet position of Attorney General in 2019, it sounded like this.
I want to confirm that Bill Barr, one of the most respected jurists in the country, highly respected lawyer, former Attorney General under the Bush administration, a terrific man, a terrific person, a brilliant man, and he was my first choice from day one, respected by Republicans and respected by Democrats. He will be nominated for the United States Attorney General.
And when Trump no longer needed Bill Barr, he characterized Barr as a dumb, weak, slow-moving, lethargic, godless, and lazy moron and a loser. Because Trump had now moved up the stairs. Internationally, when Trump meets Putin, he acts like a child meeting his idol. Because to Trump, Putin represents the highest level of the staircase. In Russia, you live to praise Putin or you may not live at all. To a narcissist, this is living the dream. And so to be like Putin, Trump wants to bask in Putin's reflected glory. In contrast, when Trump meets Ukrainian President Zelensky, Trump tries to belittle him. It doesn't matter that Zelensky represents the millions of Ukrainians who are fighting for our free world. Because to Trump, Zelensky is just a step to be trodden on to reach the level of Putin. This is not foreign policy shaping the actions of a president. This is narcissism shaping foreign policy. And that is why Trump's second term has pushed freedom to the brink.
I've solved 6 wars.
Tell you, you don't have the cards. Our country is doing so well. I don't think I'm going to make it to heaven. I'm doing a great job for a lot of people, but I don't think so. I'm just not worthy of heaven. I'm not going to make it.
Lies expire, but truth endures. So naturally, we've founded our free world on truth, revealed by science, sustained by education, and ever more deeply woven into society. But just like freedom, truth is now challenged, because to liars, truth is an unwelcome irritant, and narcissists lie. They constantly exaggerate their own achievements to seek admiration. And so, at the beginning of Trump's first term, Trump's press secretary Sean Spicer was ordered to lie that Trump's inauguration was the biggest in history. Photographs clearly proved it wasn't. But instead of conceding, Trump's senior counselor Kellyanne Conway was sent out to defend the lie in this spectacular way.
Don't be so overly dramatic about it, Chuck. You're saying it's a falsehood, and they're giving Sean Spicer, our press secretary, gave alternative facts to that. But the point remains.
Wait a minute. Alternative facts?
Alternative facts. To you and me, laughable, but to Trump, only a clear proof Kellyanne Conway had understood her assignment. And here is why. In the real world, anything can be either true or false, as represented here by the green and the red areas. Ideas which we humans share can also be true or false, as shown here with this white overlay, which I call humanity's intellectual field of view. This overlay doesn't cover everything because there are still much for us humans to discover in this world. It's always been like that, but day by day our horizon stretches even farther. For instance, the idea that the Earth revolves around the Sun has always been true, long before we humans knew anything about it, so it started out here. But during the Renaissance, more and more scientists realized the Earth was part of a solar system, now moving this idea about the Earth's orbit inside our intellectual field of view. And then, when Italian astronomer Galileo got a better telescope in 1610, he could actually prove it. In other words, his observations allowed the idea that the Earth revolves around the Sun to pass our scientific justification barrier and become real, formal knowledge. And this is the point. Any belief can be true or false, and it is difficult to tell the difference. But through justifications such as visual observations, we humans can prove some things to be true. We catalog this information, we share it, we teach it, and more people become well informed. This truth-seeking endeavor has spread to our justice systems, where you are innocent until proven guilty. It is in our journalism, where the best media only report what they can confirm to be true. We are building a world of truth, and lying becomes increasingly difficult. However, the problem is, liars have figured out a way to hack the system. Because in the realm of falsehood, it is also possible to create an illusion of formal knowledge. This is what we call myth. The Kellyanne Conways and the Trumps of this world take advantage of the fact that no human knows everything about everything. And because we are social creatures, our practical solution is to adopt the common beliefs of others. The more widely a belief is held, the more likely we are to accept it. This is what is called social prevalence. And just like truths can pass the justification barrier and become formal knowledge, falsehoods can pass the social prevalence barrier and become myth. Myths are not resilient like truths, but they can endure if they possess certain traits. A myth may spread because it has emotional resonance, or it satisfies our need for an explanation of something we really do not understand. And that opens a world of possibilities to the liars. So let me give you just one example. It's an indisputable fact that Trump lost the 2020 election to Joe Biden. The election was run the same way as any other election. It had several safeguards to ensure its integrity. It was monitored by both partisan and non-partisan observers. even 102 independent international observers from the OSCE. But to this day, Trump still nurtures the myth that the 2020 election was stolen. And according to an Ipsos poll, 34% of Americans now believe that myth. But when Trump was investigated for election interference, witnesses interviewed by special counsel Jack Smith revealed Trump privately said things like, "Can you believe I lost to this effing guy?" Speaking of Joe Biden, of course. So, nurturing the election myth is not Trump trying to correct a wrong. He knows he lost. This is Trump mimicking Putin, because in Putin's world, the truth is whatever Putin dictates. To a narcissist, this is power. The ability to rewrite history itself, to be praised for achievements never earned. It's like receiving the Nobel Peace Prize not because you earned it, but because you've laid siege to the capital of Venezuela, and now the Venezuelan recipient has no other option but to frame her Nobel Peace Prize medal and hand it to you. That is narcissistic nirvana. And this is why, with a narcissist in power, the very foundation of our free world, our truth, is under attack.
I am officially running for President of the United States. We won with poorly educated. I love the poorly educated. I hate guys that are very, very successful and you have to listen to their success stories. I like people that like to listen to my success.
Everyone likes a compliment, but to a narcissist, praise is like a drug. In 1938, psychoanalyst Otto Fenichel coined the term narcissistic supply to describe the constant flow of attention and admiration needed by narcissists because they crave to be recognized. Normally in the free world, recognition is earned through merit. Students are graded on the quality of their work, employees advance based on their performance, and political leaders rise by demonstrating competence and integrity. It's a meritocracy, a world which favors those who have merit. And that world really sucks if all you have is privilege. For that reason, the Trump world is nothing like our normal world, because Trump's life was never about merit. In his early years, Trump sought recognition by spreading the falsehood that he graduated first in his class at the Wharton Business School, even though records from Wharton clearly show this was a lie. In 1987, he pretended to be the author of the book The Art of the Deal, branding himself as a business mentor who could give advice to the elite. In reality, Trump bought the entire work from journalist Tony Schwartz, who later regretted to have, in his words, put lipstick on a pig. Later, Trump used the TV show The Apprentice to further enhance the false image that he was a successful, self-made businessman, when in fact, he had declared bankruptcy 6 times, in spite of the extreme wealth inherited from his father. But in many ways, Trump's narcissism saved his entire first term in office, because it drove him to focus all his energy on campaigning in front of applauding audiences, while all the hard work of preparing the political transition was left to experienced politicians like Chris Christie and Mike Pence, and they ensured people with merit filled his cabinet. For instance, Jim Mattis, a real 4-star general, became his Secretary of Defense, and the former UN Ambassador John Bolton became Trump's National Security Advisor. These people were a crucial, stabilizing influence, tempering Trump's most outlandish proposals with reasoned counsel. But Trump was miserable, because the advisors stuck a needle into his inflated self-image.
I'm very highly educated. I know words. I have the best words.
Because nobody knows the system better than me.
But I think nobody knows it better than me.
The man who had spent his entire adult life insisting that nobody knows more was now constantly reminded how little he knew. So, to no surprise, Trump did what he does best. he fired them all.
You're fired. Get out of here.
Brookings documented that Trump had the highest turnover of senior-level advisors among presidents as far back as Ronald Reagan. This constant revolving door created chaos, and eventually Trump lost to Joe Biden. But if Trump's first term was narcissism tempered by experienced advisors, his second term is narcissism unleashed. Because Trump caught the eye of the big tech billionaires, who saw in Trump an effective tool for twisting the arm of democracy. And so, considerable sums were secretly funneled into the Heritage Foundation, a hard-right think tank who wrote the blueprint for Trump's second term, called Project 2025. In their strategic plan, they carefully described how to reset the administrative state by replacing every secretary, every agency director, and hundreds of thousands of government employees with pure loyalists. In their own words, while a candidate with elite credentials might seem ideal, the best one will be above all loyal to the president. This is recognition in the Trump world. Your education doesn't matter, your work experience doesn't matter, your reputation doesn't matter. All that matters is loyalty to the leader. In one word, fascism.
There's no question he's the leader of our party. So now he's got a mission statement, his mission, and his goals and objectives, whatever that is, we need to embrace it. All of it. Every single word. If Donald Trump says jump 3 feet high and scratch your head, we all jump 3 feet high and scratch our heads. That's it.
That is why American democracy is eroding. Because the Trump regime is a fascist idiocracy. A caricature Nazi Germany, but with arrogance in the absence of competence. It is the reason Trump wanted Matt Gaetz to be his Attorney General, a man whose idea of a party is snorting coke and having sex with an underage girl, but by Trump nominated to run the entire US justice system because Matt Gaetz is loyal to the leader. It is the reason 4-star General Lloyd Austin was replaced by mid-level officer Pete Hegseth, a Fox News host who is now leading the entire United States military and its nearly 3 million personnel because Pete Hegseth is loyal to the leader. This is how recognition in the United States is no longer based on merit. Instead, control of the world's most powerful military, and its nuclear arsenal even, is in the hands of an out-of-control president.
God is with you, and God is using you. And because he rose, we all know that we can rise. And sir, because of his resurrection, you rose up. Because he was victorious, you were victorious. And I believe that the Lord said to tell you this. Because of his victory, you will be victorious in all you put your hand to. Amen.
The free world is in shock, paralyzed by the slow-motion collapse of America. For over a year, it has seemed as if the big tech billionaires are winning. But as Leonard Cohen wrote, there's a crack in everything. That is how the light gets in. Because what we have witnessed is not the product of a strong leadership. It is a performance produced by careful puppeteering. As far-right political strategist Steve Bannon said of Trump,
and I realize there's some people that question Trump, but look at that command performance he gave the other night. I mean, it's like Charlemagne. That's like a Viking chieftain standing up there. Russ can tell he's a very imperfect instrument, right? But he's an instrument of the Lord. He's an instrument of the Lord for his vengeance.
This was in 2023 during Biden's presidency, and Steve Bannon was sitting right next to Russell Vought, who worked for the Heritage Foundation. They had 4 years and unlimited resources to prepare the fascist takeover, and they planned the process in detail, right down to writing the actual executive orders for Trump to sign. No senators involved, no House representatives involved, just hard-right Christian nationalists dreaming big and taking orders from billionaires. But no plan survives first contact with reality, and with a narcissist as president and a cabinet of blind loyalists, the Trump administration is increasingly bogged down by problems of its own making. Trump's desire for the natural resources of Greenland and his threats to invade culminated in January when the Kingdom of Denmark responded to this security threat and deployed the Jutland Dragoon Regiment alongside Danish Special Forces to protect the island. Apparently, no advisor had warned Trump that he was threatening to take the world's largest island, which makes up 98% of the Kingdom of Denmark. A territory so large, if superimposed on Europe, it reaches all the way from Norway to Italy. That was what Trump was trying to steal. And Europe finally told Trump no. In preparation for war, blood bags were transferred to the capital Nuuk. Runways were rigged with explosives, and a coalition of at least 10 NATO countries sent troops as well as air force and naval assets to prevent the Trump invasion. All of this isolating Trump politically, both abroad and at home. The man who promised his MAGA voters no more wars had now authorized military action in Ecuador, Venezuela, Nigeria, Somalia, Iraq, Syria, and Yemen, while threatening Canada, Panama, Cuba, and now Greenland. The man whose slogan was "Make America Great Again" literally changed it to "Make Iran Great Again" and launched a war with Iran. Unprepared, uninformed, he provoked what now looks like a modern-day Vietnam War, only with an enemy 4 times larger, accompanied by a global oil crisis of unprecedented proportions. For over a year, Trump has been digging himself deeper into a hole he can no longer get out of, because there are no experts left to save Trump from Trump. This is our opening. Because a narcissist is not in it to win it. Trump is only in it for narcissistic supply. But surrounded by fools, Trump sees every move leading to failure, denying him the admiration he so badly needs, rendering him politically impotent. And while Trump and his incompetent entourage are constantly jumping from the frying pan into the fire, the clock is ticking. Fall is coming, and on November 3rd, US voters will finally get their chance to end the chaos. So vote in the midterms. Not as if your future depends on it, but because your future depends on it. Rally every American, use your voice, fill the streets with one important message. Together, we will bring Trump down.